Elena Martinez's hands trembled as she sealed the envelope, knowing that pouring her heart out on paper to someone who would never read it was the only way she could finally let go of 5 years of unrequited love. The coffee shop hummed with Saturday morning energy as she sat in her usual corner booth, staring at the cream-colored envelope containing 3 pages of raw emotion, addressed to Michael Chen, her childhood friend who had moved to Singapore 2 years ago without ever knowing how she felt. Writing the letter had been her therapist's suggestion, a way to process her feelings and move forward. She had no intention of actually sending it, but holding it made the closure feel more real somehow. Elena worked as a marine biologist at the Seattle Aquarium, spending her days researching octopus behavior and leading educational programs for visiting school groups. At 27, she had built a life she loved, but the one thing missing was someone to share it with. Michael had been that person in her mind for so long that she had unconsciously compared every date to him, every potential relationship falling short of an idealized memory. More coffee. The barista appeared at her table with a warm smile. "No thanks, I should get going. I have some errands to run." Elena tucked the letter into her tote bag alongside a stack of bills she needed to mail and her grocery list. The post office was her first stop, then the market, then home to meal prep for the week ahead. The post office on Pine Street was unusually crowded for a Saturday. Elena waited in line, mentally reviewing her to-do list while elderly tourists asked detailed questions about international shipping rates. When her turn finally came, she juggled her bag, pulling out the bills one by one to mail. The postal worker, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and efficiency born from decades of service, processed each envelope with practiced speed. "That everything?" she asked. Elena glanced into her bag. "Yes, that should be it." She walked out into the crisp October air, feeling lighter somehow. The letter was still in her bag, but the act of mailing the bills felt symbolic, like she was sending away old debts and old feelings both. She would keep the letter for one more day, then throw it away. That felt right. It was not until she got home 3 hours later, groceries unpacked and a pot of soup simmering on the stove, that she reached into her bag for the letter and found it gone. Her heart stopped. Frantically, she dumped the entire contents of her tote onto the kitchen table. Wallet, keys, receipts, a half-eaten granola bar, her work ID, but no cream-colored envelope. "No, no, no," she whispered, her mind racing back through the morning. The coffee shop, the post office, the market. When had she last seen it? She grabbed her phone and called the coffee shop first. "Sorry, nothing turned in matching that description," the manager told her. The grocery store reported the same. That left only one possibility, one that made her stomach drop to her feet. The post office. She must have accidentally grabbed it along with the bills. Must have handed it to the postal worker without realizing. Elena called the post office immediately, but the line rang busy. She tried 4 more times before someone answered. "I think I accidentally mailed something I did not mean to mail," she said, words tumbling out in a rush. "Is there any way to get it back?" "Once it has been processed and sorted, there is not much we can do," the worker explained. Was it already stamped? Elena's mind went blank. Had she put a stamp on it? She had bought a sheet of stamps 2 weeks ago, and in an absent-minded moment while writing the letter, she might have. Yes, she had definitely put Michael's address on it, his parents' old address in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, since she did not know his exact address in Singapore. But his parents had moved, she suddenly remembered. They had downsized to a condo in Bellevue after Michael left for Asia, which meant her deeply personal, painfully honest love letter was currently heading to whatever stranger now lived at 2847 Cascade Drive. She spent the rest of the weekend in a state of low-grade panic. There was nothing she could do. Monday morning, she dragged herself to work and tried to focus on preparing for a school group visit, but her mind kept drifting to the letter. What would the person do when they received it? Probably throw it away, she told herself. Or maybe they would think it was strange and just ignore it. Best case scenario, they would realize it was misdirected and simply discard it. The thought of a stranger reading her most vulnerable words made her skin crawl, but she forced herself to breathe through the anxiety. By Wednesday, she had almost convinced herself it would be fine. The letter would disappear into the void, and she would work on actually moving forward with her life, instead of pining after someone who had never seen her as more than a friend. She was leading a group of third graders through the tropical fish exhibit when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it, pointing out the clownfish and explaining their symbiotic relationship with sea anemones. The kids were delightful, asking enthusiastic questions and pressing their faces against the glass with wonder. After the tour ended and she had waved goodbye to the last student, Elena checked her phone. An email from an address she did not recognize. Email protected. Her heart began to race as she opened it. Dear Elena, I hope this message finds you well. I received your letter today at my home on Cascade Drive. It seems it was intended for someone else, someone who clearly meant a great deal to you. I want you to know that your words were beautiful, honest, and brave, even if they were not meant for me. I did not feel right simply throwing away something so heartfelt. I also did not want you to worry that it had fallen into uncaring hands. Your letter is safe with me, and I will keep your feelings private. However, if you do not mind my saying so, anyone who could inspire such depth of feeling is either remarkably fortunate or remarkably foolish, depending on whether they know and appreciate what they have. I hope you find the courage to send your words to their intended recipient, or if not, that you find someone who deserves the love you clearly have to give. With respect, James Winters. Elena read the email 3 times, emotions swirling from embarrassment to confusion to something she could not quite name. This stranger had not only read her letter but taken the time to respond with kindness. She sat down on a bench near the jellyfish tanks, their ethereal pulsing somehow calming as she processed this unexpected development. She should probably just thank him politely and let it end there. But something about his message made her curious. Who was this James Winters? And what kind of person took the time to reassure a stranger about something like this? Her fingers moved across her phone screen before she could overthink it. Dear James, thank you for your email. I cannot even begin to express how mortified I was when I realized what had happened. But your response was far kinder than I deserved for accidentally sending you my personal feelings. I appreciate your discretion more than you know. To answer your unasked question, the intended recipient does not know how I felt, and after 5 years of friendship, I think it is safe to say he never will. The letter was meant to be a goodbye to those feelings, not an actual message. Fate, it seems, had other plans and decided to humiliate me instead. Thank you again for your kindness. I hope the universe pays it back to you somehow. Elena Martinez. She hit send before she could reconsider, then spent the next hour distracted during her research work, checking her phone more often than she wanted to admit. His response came that evening while she was making dinner. Elena, no humiliation necessary. We have all held onto feelings longer than perhaps we should have. 5 years is a long time to carry something alone. If the letter was your goodbye, then I hope it brings you the closure you were seeking, even if it took an unexpected detour through my mailbox. Since we are now accidentally acquainted, I am curious, are you a writer? Your letter had a rare quality of genuine emotion that most people seem to have forgotten how to express. James. Elena smiled despite herself as she stirred pasta sauce. This was oddly pleasant, this exchange with a stranger. There was a safety in it, a lack of stakes that made honesty feel easier. Not a writer, I am afraid. I am a marine biologist, which involves a lot of writing but usually of the scientific paper variety, decidedly less romantic. I spend most of my days with octopuses, which are infinitely more straightforward than people in many ways. What do you do, James, besides graciously responding to misdirected love letters? Elena. She added a glass of wine to her evening, settling onto her couch with a book she had been meaning to read, but her attention kept drifting to her phone. When it buzzed again, she grabbed it perhaps too eagerly. A marine biologist. That explains the eloquence. Anyone who works with octopuses must have patience, intelligence, and an appreciation for complexity. I run a commercial real estate development company, which is significantly less interesting than studying marine life. Most of my days involve meetings, contracts, and trying to convince city councils that my projects will benefit their communities. I do enjoy the work, though, building things that last. There is something satisfying about creating spaces where people will live and work and make memories. Do you enjoy your work at the aquarium? James. They continued emailing over the following days, messages growing longer and more frequent. Elena found herself looking forward to his responses, checking her phone between tasks at work and smiling when she saw his name in her inbox. James was thoughtful and curious, asking questions about her research and sharing stories about his work. He had a dry sense of humor that came through in his writing, and she found herself laughing out loud more than once while reading his emails. I have to ask, she wrote on Friday evening, are you always this nice to strangers who accidentally send you personal mail, or am I special? You are definitely special, he wrote back almost immediately. In the 10 years I have lived at this address, I have never received a misdirected love letter. Plenty of misdelivered packages, a few pieces of mail for the previous owners, and once, inexplicably, someone else's pizza delivery. But your letter was a first. I am glad it was yours that found its way to me. This has been the most interesting correspondence I have had in years. Most of my emails are about zoning laws and construction permits. James. Elena hesitated before typing her next message, knowing she was crossing some invisible line from polite exchange into actual interest. Would you want to meet for coffee sometime? I realize this is probably strange, given how we met, or did not really meet, but I would like to thank you in person. And I have to admit, I am curious about the person behind these emails. Elena. She hit send and immediately wanted to take it back. What was she doing? This man was a complete stranger. He could be anyone. He could be 80 years old or married or completely different from the persona in his emails. But something told her he was not. Something about the way he wrote felt genuine. His response took longer this time, and she wondered if she had overstepped. But when her phone finally buzzed, relief flooded through her. I would like that very much. How about Sunday afternoon? There is a coffee shop in Fremont called Lighthouse Roasters that makes an excellent cortado. Does 2 o'clock work for you? I should probably mention, just so there are no surprises, that I am 33, single, and I promise I am not a serial killer or otherwise dangerous. I realize meeting someone from the internet is always a gamble, so feel free to bring a friend or meet somewhere more public if you prefer. James. Elena grinned at her phone. Sunday at 2 works perfectly. I am 27, also single, and also promise not to be a serial killer. I will come alone, but my best friend Sophie will have all your information just in case. See you then. Elena. She spent Saturday in a state of nervous anticipation, trying on 6 different outfits before settling on dark jeans and a forest green sweater that Sophie assured her looked casually beautiful without trying too hard. She washed her hair twice, told herself she was being ridiculous, and then changed her outfit again. "You are meeting for coffee, not getting married," Sophie said, sprawled on Elena's bed and watching the fashion show with amusement. "Besides, you have been emailing all week. You already know you like him." "I know I like his emails," Elena corrected. "That is different from liking him in person. What if we have nothing to talk about? What if it is awkward? What if he takes one look at me and regrets suggesting this? Then you drink your coffee, thank him politely, and leave. But I do not think that is going to happen. This guy read your love letter to someone else and responded with kindness. That says something about his character." Elena knew Sophie was right, but the nerves persisted through Saturday night and into Sunday morning. She arrived at Lighthouse Roasters 15 minutes early and ordered a latte to calm her jitters, choosing a table near the window. The coffee shop was cozy, filled with the rich aroma of fresh roasted beans and the gentle murmur of Sunday afternoon conversation. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened, and a man walked in who made Elena forget how to breathe for a moment. He was tall, probably a few inches over 6 feet, with dark hair and a strong jaw. He wore a navy blue Henley and jeans, and when his eyes scanned the shop and landed on her, he smiled in a way that transformed his entire face from handsome to devastating. He walked over to her table with confidence but not arrogance. "Elena," she stood, suddenly hyper-aware of everything, the way his voice was deeper in person, the breadth of his shoulders, the warm brown of his eyes. "James, hi. Yes, that is me." They shook hands, and she felt the calluses on his palm, the firm warmth of his grip. He ordered his coffee, and when he returned to the table, the initial awkwardness melted away almost immediately. Talking to James in person was even easier than emailing him. He asked about her work, and she found herself explaining her research on octopus cognition with more enthusiasm than she usually allowed herself on a first meeting. He listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was actually paying attention. "So they can really solve puzzles and recognize individual people?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "Absolutely. We have one named Artemis who has distinct preferences for certain staff members. She will show off for people she likes and ignore or even squirt water at people she does not. They have personalities, problem-solving skills, and some researchers believe they might even dream." "That is incredible. I had no idea they were so intelligent. Most people do not. They assume ocean intelligence stops at dolphins, but invertebrates are remarkably complex." She paused, realizing she had been talking for 10 minutes straight. "Sorry, I can go on forever about this stuff. Please do. It is refreshing to hear someone talk about their work with actual passion. Most people I meet complain about their jobs." "You said you are in commercial real estate development. Do you enjoy it?" His expression shifted, becoming more animated. "I do, actually. People hear real estate developer and assume it is all about money, and yes, that is part of it, but what I really love is the transformation. Taking an empty lot or a neglected building and turning it into something useful, something beautiful. I just finished a project in Georgetown, converted an old warehouse into affordable artist studios and live workspaces. That kind of work feels meaningful." They talked for 2 hours, until the coffee shop began to fill with the late afternoon crowd, and their table felt too small for the expanding conversation. When James suggested taking a walk along the ship canal, Elena agreed without hesitation. The October air was crisp, but not cold, the sun filtering through the clouds in that particular Seattle way that made everything look soft and golden. They walked slowly, neither of them seeming to want the afternoon to end. "Can I ask you something?" James said after a stretch of comfortable silence. "The letter you wrote, have you told him? The person it was meant for?" Elena shook her head. "Michael moved to Singapore 2 years ago. We stay in touch occasionally, but it is clear he only ever saw me as a friend. The letter was my way of letting go." "Has it worked, the letting go?" She considered the question honestly. "I think so, yes. Writing it all down made me realize I was more in love with the idea of him than the reality. We wanted different things. He was always talking about adventure, exploring the world, never staying in one place. I love Seattle. I love my work. I want roots, not wings. There is nothing wrong with knowing what you want." James's voice was quiet but firm. "Too many people drift through life without ever figuring that out." "What about you? What do you want?" He was quiet for a moment, watching the water. "Honestly, I want what you described, roots. Connection. I spent my 20s building my company, working 80-hour weeks, proving myself. Now I have the success, the money, the houses, but I come home to empty rooms. I want someone to share it with. I want Sunday mornings and inside jokes and someone who cares about my day." The vulnerability in his admission made Elena's heart ache in the best way. "That does not sound like too much to ask. You would think. But dating at this level is complicated. People hear what I do, find out what I have, and suddenly they are performing, trying to be what they think I want. Or they want the lifestyle, not the person. I never know if someone is interested in me or the idea of me." "Is that why you did not mention the specifics of your company in your emails?" He glanced at her, something like relief crossing his face. "Partially. I wanted you to get to know me first, just James, not James Winters of Winters Development Group." Elena stopped walking. "Winters Development Group? You built the new waterfront complex downtown, among other projects, yes. James, that is not just successful, that is." She trailed off, processing this information. She had read articles about the waterfront project, a mixed-use development that had transformed a rundown area into a vibrant community space with housing, retail, and public parks. The developer had been praised for prioritizing accessibility and environmental sustainability over maximum profit. She had never paid attention to the name behind it. "Is it weird now?" he asked, and there was real concern in his voice. "This is usually where things get weird." "No," she said, and meant it. "I am just recalibrating, but it does not change anything. You are still the person who wrote me kind emails about octopuses." His smile returned, genuine and warm. "Good, because I would really like to see you again, if you are interested." "I am definitely interested." They exchanged numbers before parting ways, and Elena drove home in a daze of happiness. Sophie called the moment she walked in the door, demanding details. "He is amazing, Soph. Smart and kind and funny, and we talked for hours and it felt like minutes." "And when are you seeing him again?" "We did not set a specific date, but he said he would text me." James texted her that night. "I cannot stop thinking about our conversation today. Would you be free for dinner this week? I know a place with incredible seafood, but given your profession, I am suddenly worried that might be inappropriate." "Do marine biologists eat fish?" James. Elena laughed out loud. "Marine biologists definitely eat fish, though I draw the line at octopus for obvious reasons. Dinner sounds wonderful." "When were you thinking?" Elena. "Tomorrow too eager." James. "Tomorrow is perfect." Elena. He picked her up at 7, and when Elena opened the door to find him standing there in charcoal slacks and a white button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, She had to remind herself to breathe. He had brought flowers, a simple bouquet of cream and peach roses that somehow felt more thoughtful than flashy. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her believe it. The restaurant was an intimate bistro on Capitol Hill, the kind of place with soft lighting and excellent wine and food that was art on a plate. They shared dishes, talking and laughing, the conversation flowing as easily as it had the day before. James told her about growing up in Spokane, the son of a construction foreman and a teacher, how he had worked construction every summer through college and learned the business from the ground up. "My dad taught me that buildings are more than just structures," James said, swirling wine in his glass. "They are part of the community. They should make people's lives better, not just exist for profit. That philosophy shaped everything I do." Elena shared stories about her childhood in Portland, her mother's greenhouse business, her father's job as a fisherman that had sparked her love of the ocean. "He used to take me out on the boat on weekends. I would spend hours staring into the water, fascinated by everything beneath the surface. My mom was sure I would grow out of it, but it only got stronger. She must be proud of you now. She is, though she still does not really understand what I do. She keeps asking when I am going to write a book about fish that normal people can read." Elena smiled. "What about your parents? Are they still in Spokane?" A shadow crossed James's face. "My dad passed away 5 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden. My mom still lives there, though I have been trying to convince her to move closer to Seattle. I am so sorry." Elena reached across the table, touching his hand. "That must have been devastating." "It was, still is some days. He never got to see what the company became. I wish I could show him." James's hand turned over, his fingers lacing with hers. "Sorry, that got heavy. Do not apologize. Loss is part of life. My dad died 3 years ago, lung cancer. Even though we knew it was coming, it did not make it easier." "I am sorry, Elena. That is incredibly hard." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands still linked across the table. There was something profound in sharing grief, in acknowledging the losses that shaped them. It created an intimacy that felt deeper than their brief acquaintance should allow. The evening ended with James walking her to her door, both of them lingering on her front steps, unwilling to say good night. "I had a wonderful time," Elena said. "So did I." He stepped closer, his hand coming up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Can I see you again? You better." He smiled, and then he was kissing her, soft and sweet and perfect. Elena melted into it, her hands fisting in his shirt, his arms wrapping around her waist. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "Dinner again Friday?" he asked against her lips. "Yes." Over the following weeks, Elena and James fell into a pattern. They saw each other several times a week, exploring Seattle together, discovering new restaurants and revisiting old favorites. James came to the aquarium for one of her public talks, watching from the back with undisguised pride as she explained marine ecosystems to a captivated audience. Elena visited one of his construction sites, watching him interact with his crew with respect and easy authority, seeing firsthand how much his workers admired him. "You are really hands-on," she observed, watching him examine blueprints with the foreman. "I never want to be the kind of boss who stays in an office and issues orders. My dad taught me that you earn respect by working alongside your people, not above them." The more time Elena spent with James, the more she fell for him. He was thoughtful in small ways, remembering she liked almond milk in her coffee, texting her good morning every day without fail, showing up at her apartment with takeout when she mentioned having a rough day. He was also romantic in ways that surprised her, planning a surprise trip to the San Juan Islands for a weekend. where they kayaked among orcas and ate fresh Dungeness crab, and made love in a cabin with views of the water. I could get used to this, Elena said, wrapped in a blanket on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. James pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. Good, because I plan on making this a regular thing. Lavish weekend getaways. No, us. This. Being together. Elena turned to look at him, seeing the seriousness in his expression. They had been dating for 2 months, but it felt longer, deeper. She knew she was falling in love with him, had probably been falling since that first email. I want that too, she said quietly. You should know, I am falling for you. Hard. Good, he said again, his smile breaking through the seriousness. Because I am already there. I think I started falling the moment I read your letter and realized someone could feel that deeply. And then I met you, and you were even better than your words. He kissed her then, deep and slow, and Elena felt herself surrendering completely to this unexpected love that had found her through an accidental letter. When they returned to Seattle, James took a week-long business trip to San Francisco for a major project negotiation. They texted constantly, had video calls every evening, but Elena missed him with an intensity that surprised her. Sophie noticed immediately when they met for their weekly dinner date. You have it bad, Sophie said, grinning over her pasta. I really do. Is it crazy? We have only been together 2 months. Who cares? When you know, does he feel the same way? He says he does. He told me he loves me. Sophie nearly dropped her fork. What? When? Why am I just hearing this now, last weekend in the islands? And I love him too, Soph, I really do. This is huge. I am so happy for you. You deserve this after all that wasted time on Michael. I do not even think about Michael anymore. That feels like a different lifetime. When James returned from San Francisco, he showed up at Elena's apartment at 10 at night, still in his suit from the flight, and kissed her breathless the moment she opened the door. I missed you, he said against her mouth. I missed you too. How did the meetings go? We got the deal. 50-story mixed-use tower, affordable housing component, rooftop gardens. It is going to be incredible. His excitement was contagious, but I did not come here to talk about work. I came here because I spent the entire flight home thinking about you. They made love that night with an urgency born from a week apart, and afterward, lying tangled together in Elena's bed, James traced patterns on her bare shoulder and said, "Move in with me." Elena propped herself up on one elbow, searching his face. What? Move in with me. I know it is fast, but I do not want to spend another night without you. I have plenty of space. You could even have your own office for when you bring work home. What do you say, James? That is a huge step. I know. And if you need more time, I understand, but I am sure about this, about us. His hand cupped her face, thumb stroking her cheek. I love you, Elena. I want to build a life with you. She thought about her small apartment, about the way she had been spending most of her time at his place anyway. Thought about waking up next to him every morning, coming home to him every night. The decision was surprisingly easy. Okay. Okay. Yes, let's do it. I will move in with you. His grin was brilliant, and he rolled her beneath him, kissing her until she was breathless and laughing. They made love again, slower this time, savoring each touch, each whispered word of love. 2 weeks later, Elena officially moved into James's house on Cascade Drive, the same address where her letter had accidentally arrived months ago. The house was beautiful, a modern craftsman with walls of windows overlooking Lake Washington. James had cleared space for her things, made sure she felt like it was theirs, not just his. This is the room where I read your letter, he said, showing her his home office. I was sitting at that desk when I opened it. I remember thinking whoever wrote this had an extraordinary heart. And now here I am. And now here you are. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Fate works in mysterious ways. Living together was an easy adjustment. They fell into comfortable routines, cooking dinner together, taking evening walks around the neighborhood, spending weekends exploring or simply enjoying each other's company. James made space in his busy schedule for her, never missing one of her presentations at the aquarium, always asking about her research. Elena learned the rhythms of his work, understood when he needed quiet to decompress from a difficult day, when he needed to talk through a problem. 4 months after she moved in, James took her to a charity gala for a children's hospital. Elena wore a midnight blue gown that James had insisted on buying for her, despite her protests that she could wear something she already owned. The event was at a downtown hotel, a glittering affair with Seattle's elite in attendance. "I should warn you," James said as they walked in, "these events can be a bit much. Lots of people wanting to talk business, lots of networking. Stay close to me, always." She watched him work the room with practiced ease, shaking hands and making conversation, but his hand never left the small of her back, keeping her anchored to his side. People were curious about her, asked about her work, and she found herself explaining marine biology to tech executives and philanthropists. James watched her with obvious pride, jumping in only to brag about her achievements. "She is being modest," he said, when Elena downplayed her research. "She has been published in 3 major journals this year, and her work on cephalopod cognition is getting international attention." Halfway through the evening, a woman approached them, tall and blonde with the kind of beauty that came from expensive maintenance. "James, darling, it has been ages." James stiffened slightly. "Vanessa, how are you? Fabulous. I heard about the San Francisco project. Congratulations." Her eyes slid to Elena, assessing. "And who is this?" "This is Elena Martinez, my girlfriend. Elena Vanessa Chen." The name registered, and Elena felt her stomach drop slightly. "Chen? Are you related to Michael Chen?" Vanessa's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "He is my cousin. Do you know him? We were friends growing up. Small world, indeed." Vanessa's smile did not reach her eyes. "James and I used to date. Did he mention that?" "He did not," Elena said evenly, glancing at James. "It was years ago," James said quickly. "We were young. It did not work out." "Because you were always working," Vanessa said with a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. "I see you have made time for a relationship now. How nice." The conversation mercifully ended when someone called Vanessa away, but Elena felt unsettled. James sensed it immediately, guiding her to a quiet corner. "I should have told you about Vanessa. It was 5 years ago, and it ended badly. She wanted a lifestyle, and I wanted a partner. We were fundamentally incompatible." "Is she why you were single for so long?" "Part of it. She made me cautious about who I let into my life. But you, Elena, you are nothing like her. You never asked what I could give you. You just wanted me." Elena softened, seeing the honesty in his eyes. "I do want you, just you. And you have me. Completely." They left the gala early, driving home with the windows down despite the December chill, laughing about some of the more ridiculous conversations from the evening. Back at home, James built a fire and they curled up on the couch with wine and the kind of comfortable silence that only exists between people who truly know each other. "I have been thinking," James said, his fingers playing with her hair, "about what happens next for us." "What do you mean?" "I mean I know what I want. I want forever with you. Marriage, kids, the whole thing. I am not saying we need to rush, but I want you to know where my head is." Elena's heart pounded. They had talked vaguely about the future, but this was concrete, real. "I want that too, all of it." "Yeah. Yeah." He kissed her then, deep and tender, and Elena felt the promise in it, the commitment. This was not a fleeting romance or a passionate fling. This was the real thing, the kind of love that lasted. Christmas came, and Elena brought James home to Portland to meet her mother and younger brother. Her mother fell in love with James immediately, charmed by his manners and his obvious devotion to Elena. "He is a good man," her mother said when they had a moment alone in the kitchen. "You can see it in how he looks at you." "I think I am going to marry him, Mom," her mother smiled, pulling her into a hug. "I think so too, honey." In February, on a rainy Seattle Saturday, James took Elena back to the coffee shop where they had first met in person. She thought it was just a nostalgic visit, reminiscing about that nervous first meeting. But when they sat down at the same table by the window, James reached across and took her hand. "You remember what I said in my first email to you?" he asked. "You said a lot of things. I said that the person who inspired your letter was either very fortunate or very foolish. I have been thinking about that a lot lately, about how your mistake became my fortune, how a letter meant for someone else brought you to me." He stood, and Elena's breath caught as he lowered himself onto one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. The coffee shop went quiet around them, but Elena only had eyes for James. "Elena Martinez, from the moment I read your words, I knew you had the capacity to love deeply, fiercely, completely. Then I met you, and I realized those words did not even capture half of who you are. You are brilliant and passionate and kind. You make me want to be better, do better, love better. I want to spend the rest of my life earning the love you give so freely. Will you marry me?" He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the light like water in sunlight. "Yes," Elena said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, of course, yes." The coffee shop erupted in applause as James slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her as if they were the only two people in the world. Elena laughed against his mouth, dizzy with happiness, unable to believe this was her life. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much. I love you too. Always." They married that summer in a ceremony on the beach in the San Juan Islands, the place where they had first said "I love you." It was a small wedding, just close family and friends, exactly what they both wanted. Elena wore a simple white dress with her hair loose and wildflowers in her hands, and when she walked down the aisle to James, his eyes filled with tears. "You are so beautiful," he whispered when she reached him. The ceremony was short and sweet, their vows personal and heartfelt. James promised to always read her letters, even the accidentally sent ones, and Elena promised to always appreciate how fate worked in mysterious ways. They exchanged rings as the sun set over the water, and when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, James dipped her into a kiss that had their guests cheering. The reception was a joyful celebration, full of laughter and dancing and toasts that made them both cry and laugh in equal measure. Sophie gave a maid of honor speech that included the entire story of the letter, which had everyone in stitches, and James's best friend and business partner, Marcus, told stories about James that revealed a softer side Elena already knew but loved hearing about. "To Elena and James," Marcus said, raising his glass, "may your love story always be as unexpected and beautiful as it began." They honeymooned in Greece, spending 2 weeks exploring islands and eating incredible food and making love in rooms with views of the Aegean Sea. James had cleared his schedule completely, refusing to check email or take calls, devoted entirely to his new wife. "I could stay here forever," Elena said one evening, watching the sunset from their villa balcony. "We can come back whenever you want," James said, his arms around her waist. "Every year, if that makes you happy. You make me happy. Everything else is just bonus." When they returned to Seattle, They settled into married life with the same easy compatibility that had marked their relationship from the start. Elena continued her research, accepting a promotion to senior marine biologist that came with more responsibility and her own small team. James's company continued to grow, taking on increasingly ambitious projects, but he never let work consume him the way he had before Elena. They made time for date nights, for weekends away, for the small daily moments that built a life together. A year after their wedding, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She took 3 tests to be sure, then planned an elaborate surprise to tell James. She bought a children's book about ocean animals and wrapped it with a note that said, "For your future reading list." When James opened it that evening, confused at first, realization dawning slowly, his face transformed with joy. "Really? We are having a baby. We are having a baby." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing and crying, unable to contain the overflow of happiness. They called their families that night, shared the news with friends, began the exciting and terrifying journey into parenthood together. The pregnancy was smooth, and James was the most attentive husband imaginable, attending every appointment, reading every book, talking to Elena's growing belly every night. They converted one of the spare rooms into a nursery, painting it soft greens and blues like the ocean Elena loved. James insisted on putting together all the furniture himself, determined to build the crib with his own hands the way his father had done for him. "I want our kid to know that some things are worth doing yourself," he explained, focused intently on the instruction manual. "That love is in the details." Their daughter was born on a clear spring morning, arriving 2 weeks early, and completely taking over their hearts the moment they saw her. They named her Lydia Rose, and she had Elena's dark hair and James's brown eyes and lungs that announced her presence to the entire hospital. "She is perfect," James whispered, cradling his daughter with a tenderness that made Elena fall in love with him all over again. "We made this perfect person." "We did. Are you ready for this?" He looked up, meeting her eyes, his own wet with tears. "With you, I am ready for anything." The first few months were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. James took paternity leave, something almost unheard of at his level, but he refused to miss these early days. They fumbled through feedings and diaper changes and sleepless nights together, supporting each other, figuring out this new phase as a team. When Elena returned to work part-time, James adjusted his schedule to be home more, hiring a nanny for the days when both of them had commitments, but making sure one of them was always with Lydia as much as possible. They brought her to the aquarium, where she stared wide-eyed at the fish tanks, and to James's construction sites, where he put tiny noise-canceling headphones on her and showed her the buildings rising from the ground. "She is going to grow up thinking everyone lives like this," Elena said one evening, watching James play with their daughter on the living room floor. "Like what?" "Loved, secure, with parents who adore each other and her." James smiled, reaching out to take Elena's hand. "That is exactly what I want her to think, because it is true." On their 3rd wedding anniversary, James surprised Elena with a framed copy of the original letter she had accidentally sent him, the one that had started everything. He had kept it all this time, and now it hung in his office, a reminder of how unexpectedly life could change. "I read this sometimes," he admitted, "when I need perspective. It reminds me how easily I could have missed you. If you had caught the mistake, if I had thrown it away, if either of us had been too cautious to reach out, we would have gone on living separate lives, never knowing what we were missing." "Do you think we would have met some other way?" Elena asked, studying the familiar handwriting. "I like to think so. I like to think some version of fate would have brought us together, but I am grateful it happened the way it did." That letter showed me who you were before I ever saw your face. It let me fall for your heart first." Elena leaned into him, their daughter asleep upstairs, their life spread out around them in this house that had once been his but was now completely theirs. She thought about Michael, wondered briefly if he ever thought about her, but it was a distant curiosity with no sting attached. That chapter had closed completely, making room for this one, the one she was living right now. "Do you ever regret it?" James asked quietly. "That he never knew how you felt? That you never got closure in the traditional way?" "No," Elena said honestly. "Because if he had loved me back, I would never have written that letter, and I would never have found you. Everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. Even the wrong address, especially the wrong address. It was the right one all along. I just did not know it yet." James kissed her temple, holding her close as the evening settled around them. Outside, Seattle sparkled with city lights and possibility. Inside, they had everything they needed. 2 years later, they welcomed a son, Thomas James, who looked exactly like his father and had his mother's curiosity about everything. Lydia was a devoted big sister, already protective of her little brother, and the house filled with the chaos and joy of a growing family. Elena cut back her hours at the aquarium, wanting to be present for these fleeting years when her children were small. And James did the same, delegating more at work and setting firm boundaries about family time. They took vacations together, made traditions, built the kind of childhood memories they both wanted for their kids. "Remember when it was just us?" Elena said one night after finally getting both kids to bed, collapsing onto the couch next to James. "Vaguely," he joked, pulling her against him. "It was quieter, cleaner, significantly less exhausting. Do you miss it?" "Not even a little bit. This right here, this is everything I wanted, even the chaos." As the years passed, their love deepened in the way long relationships do, becoming less about passionate firsts and more about steady presence. They knew each other's rhythms, could communicate with a look across a crowded room. They fought sometimes, the way all couples do, about money or parenting or whose turn it was to handle the endless logistics of family life. But they always came back to each other, always remembered that they were on the same team. When Lydia started kindergarten, Elena returned to work full-time, accepting an offer to direct the education and outreach department at the aquarium. It was a perfect fit, allowing her to shape programs and share her love of marine biology with thousands of visitors every year. James's company had become one of the most respected development firms on the West Coast, but he had learned to balance ambition with presence, success with satisfaction. One evening, when Lydia was 7 and Thomas was 5, they all sat around the dinner table and Lydia asked how Mommy and Daddy had met. Elena and James exchanged a look, smiling at the memory. "Well," Elena began, "it is actually a funny story. Mommy accidentally sent Daddy a letter that was meant for someone else." "Was it a love letter?" Lydia asked, eyes wide. "It was," James confirmed, "but it was not meant for me. It was supposed to go to someone else, but it came to my house by mistake." "That is silly," Thomas said. "You should check the address." "You are absolutely right," Elena said, trying not to laugh. "I should have checked better. But because I made that mistake, I met Daddy. And if I had not met Daddy, we would not have you too." Lydia considered this seriously. "So the mistake was good." "The best mistake I ever made," Elena said, reaching across the table to take James's hand. "Sometimes," James added, looking at his children with all the love in the world, "the best things in life happen when we least expect them. When we let go of our plans and trust that things will work out the way they are supposed to." That night, after the kids were asleep, Elena and James stood in the doorway of the nursery that was no longer a nursery, Now Thomas's room full of toys and books and the beautiful chaos of childhood. They held hands, shoulders touching, watching their son sleep. "You remember that first email you sent me?" Elena asked quietly. "I remember all of them. You said you hoped I would find someone who deserved the love I had to give. I did say that. I found him. In the most unexpected way possible." James turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "We found each other, and I thank whatever twist of fate made you put the wrong address on that envelope every single day." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of years of love, and Elena melted into it the way she always did, still feeling that flutter in her chest even after all this time. They walked to their bedroom hand in hand, checked on Lydia in her room covered in ocean posters and drawings, and finally made it to their own bed, exhausted but content. As Elena drifted off to sleep in James's arms, she thought about the letter she had written so many years ago, the words of love meant for someone else that had found their way to the person they were truly meant for. She thought about how close she had come to never meeting James, never building this life, never experiencing this depth of love. And she sent a silent thank you to her past self for making that mistake, for being brave enough to respond to a stranger's email, for taking a chance on coffee with someone she had never met. The wrong address had led her to the right person. And everything that came after, every moment of joy and challenge and ordinary magic, had been worth the accidental detour. Because sometimes the universe knows what you need better than you do. Sometimes a mistake is actually a gift in disguise. And sometimes love finds you in the most unexpected ways, when you are not even looking for it, arriving like a letter in the mail that changes everything. Years later, when Lydia was preparing to leave for college and Thomas was in high school, Elena would take out that framed letter and read it again, remembering the girl she had been when she wrote it, heartbroken and hopeful and trying to let go. She barely recognized that version of herself, so much had changed. And yet, the capacity to love that she had poured into those pages had not changed at all. It had simply found its proper home. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, coming up behind her in his office where the letter hung. "How young we were, how much has changed." "Not everything has changed." He wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I still love you the way I did the day I read those words, more even." "How is that possible?" "Because love is not finite, it grows, it deepens. Every year with you, every moment we share, adds to it. We have more history now, more memories, more reasons to love each other." Elena turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had become her entire world, her partner in every sense of the word. His hair had threads of silver now, lines around his eyes that had not been there when they met, but he was still the same James who had written her that first kind email, who had shown up for coffee with an open heart, who had built a life with her brick by brick. "I would write that letter 1,000 times if I knew it would lead me here," she said. "And I would read it 1,000 times more. You are my every day, Elena, my every choice, my every moment of gratitude." They kissed in the late afternoon light streaming through the windows, in the house where their love had begun with an accident and grown into something permanent and real and beautiful. Outside, they could hear their children, not so much children anymore, laughing about something in the backyard. Inside, they held each other, two people who had found their way to each other through the randomness of the universe and the deliberate choice to stay. The letter hung on the wall behind them, a testament to how unexpectedly life could change, how beautifully wrong could become right. And in that moment, Elena understood completely what her therapist had meant all those years ago about writing her feelings down as a path to closure. She had gotten closure, just not the kind she had expected. She had closed the door on unrequited love and opened a window to something so much bigger, so much better. The sun set over Lake Washington, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, and Elena and James stood together in the home they had built, surrounded by the life they had created, grateful every day for the mistake that had brought them together. Because sometimes the wrong address is exactly the right one. Sometimes fate knows better than we do. And sometimes a letter meant for someone else finds its way to the person who was meant to read it all along, changing 2 lives forever with 3 pages of honest words and an envelope sent to 2847 Cascade Drive. In the end, Elena never did tell Michael about her feelings from all those years ago. There was no need. That chapter had closed itself, gently and completely, the moment she met James, and if she ever thought about what might have been, it was only with relief and gratitude that it had not worked out the way she once thought she wanted. Because the universe had bigger plans. Better plans. Plans that included a chance email response and a coffee shop meeting and a love that would last the rest of their lives. That night, tucked into bed beside the man who had received her letter and responded with kindness, who had turned an accident into a love story, Elena fell asleep smiling, her hand in James's, their breathing synchronized after years of sleeping side by side. And if the universe was listening, it would have heard her whisper a final thank you for wrong addresses and right people, and the beautiful, unexpected way that love finds us when we least expect it, but most need it. The story of Elena and James was not the one she had planned to write. It was better. It was real. It was proof that sometimes our mistakes are the universe's way of correcting our course, steering us toward what we truly need rather than what we think we want. And as the city lights twinkled outside their windows and their family slept peacefully under one roof, the letter on the wall stood as a permanent reminder that the best love stories often begin with the words, "I think I made a mistake," followed by someone unexpected responding with kindness and possibility. Their children would grow up hearing the story of how their parents met, would think it was romantic and funny in equal measure, would eventually understand that love often arrives in the most unexpected packages. They would learn from watching their parents that real love is steady and kind, that it weathers storms and celebrates victories, that it grows deeper with time rather than fading. And maybe, years from now, one of them would make their own unexpected mistake that would lead them to their own love story, the cycle continuing in the beautiful, chaotic way that life unfolds. But that was a story for another time. Tonight was just about Elena and James, about 2 people who had found each other across the randomness of the universe, who had chosen each other every day since, who had built something lasting and true from the foundation of an accidentally misdirected letter. Tonight was about gratitude and love, and the sweet satisfaction of knowing they had found exactly what they were looking for, even though neither of them had known to look at 2847 Cascade Drive. And somewhere, filed away in a drawer, was Michael's last email to Elena from 2 years ago, asking if she had ever met someone special, telling her about his own engagement to a woman he had met in Singapore. Elena had responded with genuine happiness for him, with no regret or lingering feelings, just the warm contentment of someone who had found their own happy ending. Because that is what good love does. It frees you from the past and anchors you in the present, giving you everything you need to build a future worth living. The moon rose over Seattle, casting silver light across the water, and in a house on Cascade Drive, a family slept peacefully, their love story written in accidentally addressed envelopes and purposefully chosen forevers. And if you looked closely at that framed letter on the office wall, you would see not just the words of someone trying to let go, but the beginning of something neither person could have predicted, the first page of a love story that would last a lifetime, proving once and for all that sometimes the wrong address is exactly right.